Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini.
What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to party hardy.
Ooh, I like partying. Not like the old days, but sure.
Yeah, we're going to party hardy.
All right, so we walk into this tenderly, but we're going to talk about chiropractic and politics. I'm a little nervous about this one.
I am too, because we obviously have to state that we're not talking about politics per se. We're not taking sides. We're not going to say anything that's an opinion. What we're talking about is how politics direct chiropractic in our lives.
Yeah, this isn't about what political party or leaning you might have or we might have. This is about really policy, about the formation of laws, regulations, things like that. And, not many times, but sometimes I've heard chiropractors say, well, I'm not in politics. I stay away from all that. And I say, well, do you practice in your state? Yeah. I said, well, you're
in politics.
Like any professional license, you're in it.
Right.
Whether you like it or not. That's it.
And whether you're blue or red, let's just say we're all purple right now. Okay? We're a mix of everything. But
yeah.
We are.
We walk down the aisle. We're not on one side or the other.
Right.
How about that?
In Massachusetts, didn't even have a license in this state until 1966. And
what was it like practicing without a license?
But you don't think politics has anything to do with it. But then when the vote came through in Massachusetts to vote whether or not to allow chiropractic as a profession, pretty much the law, those that didn't want to say yes, but agreed to not vote against it, all of a sudden the vote comes up and they go, I think I have to go to the men's room. And I am not lying when I say that there were people who literally stepped out during the vote because they didn't want to express a vote, but they weren't going to oppose the vote either.
Yeah, that probably still happens today.
And I'm saying that's pure politics. That was understanding that was going to happen before it happened, because you're not going to put something out there that you don't have an expectation of a positive outcome.
The reason why we wanted to talk about this is because it does shape, form, and limit or expand scope of practice. I mean, these things are all part of it. We're going to break that down, but to preface it all, I've got a couple of fun quotes. I'll give one of the fun quotes.
Okay.
Napoleon Bonaparte, he said, in politics, stupidity is not a handicap. I didn't say it.
Yep. No, we're just quoting. We are just quoting.
Yeah. So when we're talking about laws, regulations, policies, scope, you name it, we're talking about politics as sort of a general term. And so you've been around a little while, Doc.
A little bit.
What have you seen as far as in terms of the way chiropractors practice? Do you think things have changed over the years?
Oh, I mean, it's remarkable to look back and in retrospect. When I started practice in Massachusetts, we were not in any insurance. Everything was cash. Everybody that walked through your door knew they were paying you, or they weren't walking through the door. We just weren't in insurance. And then about 3 to 4 years into practice, they started letting us into some of the insurances, which politically took a lot of effort to make happen, to get us
Bet you regret that now, don't you?
Well, then back then, it was like, oh my God, open the door, open the floodgates. The Mercedes 80s are here. Everything was great. And then be careful what you ask for. Fast forward to today, we're in Massachusetts. We are literally in every health plan there is, one way or another.
Pretty much.
Not
Not all.
But I mean, it's we have the Romney/Obamacare type of model here where, and the problem is that we're in it, but we don't get paid well enough to do it anymore. So half the problem we have is we got what we asked for. We got in. But careful what you ask for. We're in a way that's actually hurting us, because in Massachusetts, with the cost of living being the way it is, the reimbursement schedule doesn't make it possible to survive on what they pay.
I think a lot of states are like that. Some are more generous. And Part of the problem is that the patient responsibility is overwhelmingly the lion's share of any allowable now, to the point where sometimes you have to refund a patient a portion of their copay because the allowable is less than their copay, which I think is criminal. You want to talk about politics? I think that should change. I don't think that any allowable should exceed a copay.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, a copay should exceed an allowable.
Right.
Sorry, said that backwards.
Yeah. But I mean, this, and I remember you saying this because I used to say, so what's the difference? They have insurance, but it's lousy coverage. So let them come in and they're going to end up paying you, which is no different than if they didn't have insurance back in the day when people would come in and pay you. And you made the point, which is correct. We pay so much for our insurance. They want to use it.
Yeah, there's a mentality change with patients we talked about in previous episodes about my insurance should cover everything because you are paying a whopping amount both with your premium and your patient responsibility.
Right. So you're stuck with this. You're stuck with this concept that I'm in the insurance and my patients want me to use the insurance. So to get them to steer away from that takes effort, takes time. And we talked about this in a self-pay practice as opposed to an insurance practice. It's not easier. It's just different. So.
Well, and the reality is you got a lot of Goliaths out there because there's not that many carriers, and the bigger ones, I feel like, they basically, they dictate everything, right? But this is where, when you talk about politics and what Tip O'Neill used to say, all politics is local, like the grassroots stuff is what does get attention these days. And I think gone are the days, unfortunately, of patients with picketing signs in front of their state house for chiropractic. Like I see pictures of that.
I've been there, done that.
Yeah. Like it's almost a shame that probably wouldn't happen again.
Yeah.
For something like a profession. But, that's the stuff that gets attention. That's the stuff that gets traction in these legislative cycles because they don't want that kind of,
When you ask what died over the years, what changed is what I said. Well, what changed is the militant mentality has gone away. So we don't fight for things anymore as a profession. We work toward things.
But you know
we
what?
Don't fight for, like you say, there's
Why?
no more protests.
Why? Because nobody feels like they can make a change. I don't
Right.
think people, maybe I'm going to talk for everybody right now.
Right. Go
How-
ahead.
Yeah. I
I want to go get a coffee. I'll be
Right.
back. He'll speak for me. Yeah.
How narcissistic of me. But anyway, I think that, that whole like one vote can make a change, or if I say
Right.
something, and, we're on regulatory boards in our state, right? And there are things that at my last board meeting that came up, and I said, these are legislative changes. Not only can we not talk about it from the executive side on a regulatory board, but we also can't do anything about it in the sense that if you want that to change, you have to be the voice to make that happen. And to me, what's effective is coalitions. If we could get our trade associations to create coalitions when they have common problems, like insurance reimbursement, I think is a common problem in most professions now.
Yeah. Like I say, we're in it, and now we're in it in a way that's detrimental because we can't get paid well enough to do what we do. And that makes it a struggle. So chiropractors tend to, if they're insurance-based, may actually be struggling and have great practices because they're not making enough money per reimbursement. So you have to recognize that politics is the way that changed in the past. And politics are not happening right now when it comes to effective change right now in chiropractic.
And the system it's not fair in the sense that, if you're an attorney and you're fresh out of school, you have a certain rate per hour. Your attorney who's 20 years out of school, you have a different hourly rate than someone who's green and brand new. But in chiropractic, the allowable for the most part is the same unless you somehow individually negotiate. So someone like you, Doc, who's been in the business and been a professional for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, like almost talking centuries now. Just saying. But someone who just is fresh out of school, Blue Cross, Harvard Pilgrim, Cigna, Aetna, they're all going to pay you and that doctor the exact same amount. Is that fair?
No. And let alone that the rate itself is not fair to start with.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden you're stuck with this, and you come out of school with $200,000 worth of college loans, and that's just graduate school alone if you're lucky. And they're paying you a pittance for a treatment, and you're just starting out, so you don't have a ton of people coming into your office quite yet. And all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, the average chiropractor in this country makes $80,000 a year.
Maybe.
Now, here in Massachusetts, that's not a high rate of pay. That's not, I mean, you can get a lot of jobs that don't have the responsibilities we have and make $80,000 a year. Not saying it's survival, but I'm saying it's easy to spend that kind of money here in a high cost of living state.
The statistics, the stats show that a family of four is not going to live on that.
Not going to live on that.
And in a lot of states like that.
Right. So you want to buy, you want to get a home and all of that. Not going to happen at $80,000.
The perspective could be different though, right? So a new doc coming out could say, well, I should get paid more than you because you've been around long enough. You don't have the kind of debt I have coming out of school. It's not fair that you would get paid more, even though you're experienced, which doesn't, to me, it's a lean argument, but.
Right.
But anyway, one could say, right?
It could go back and forth, but it all has to start with having the power to influence the people who make the decisions about the laws and regulations so that what you do can be treated as fairly as other professionals. Perfect example, that if you were to go to a hospital, go to a doctor who works out of a hospital, you go in there and if you look at your bill, you're going to get a payment. You're going to have all these different codes, and the code's going to be for the exam. And then, and I'm thinking about an example where I went and had my ears examined. So I go there, and there's the exam code, and then the doctor looked at my ear.
Did your wife say, get your ears examined?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
You're not listening?
And I said, what? Yeah. He looked at my ear, and he looked down, he put a tube down my nose. 3 different codes. And then I get the EOB, and I see 6 codes on the bill. But because this doctor worked out of a hospital, the facility gets the bill for the facility visit, and then they double billed looking down my nose and looking in my ear. So even though the rate of reimbursement was cut, because we all have provider write-offs when it comes to insurances, right? They doubled the bill, cut it in half, which means they really got paid full fee. We can't do that. We go in there, we put a charge on our bill, they cut it severely with the provider write-offs, and then that's it. That's what we have to take. That's politics. Having the ability to bill for this facility that we can't bill. And why is that? We're not a powerful enough force for them to even worry about. We're the flea on their back.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes even if you're a powerful Goliath of, let's say, an insurance company, you still have to follow what your particular state or federal dictates, right? So we look at, like we talked about GLP-1 coverage, right? And insurance companies are taking a massive bath on that right now. But they're all.
Oh, really?
I know. I feel really bad too.
I feel really bad. So
I have tissues over here if you need it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they need to lean out a little bit themselves.
But as of next year, coverage and medical necessity, it's all changing. It's all changing for a lot of these carriers. So this vanity use is going away, and that is having that influence we talked about in reimbursement in other professions and specialties because of the bottom line.
Yeah. And it's not going to stop people from using this drug. They're just going to pay for it. They're going to pay through the nose for it because in their minds, the value is there.
Right. So this, when we talk about like parity, to me, that's almost a subjective term because there isn't equality within the system when it comes to reimbursing chiropractors versus other either medical or physical medicine specialties. There's just a vast difference there.
Right. And here's an example of not having the power. How many of you out there listening to this have contacted your representative and your senator about the Medicare expansion bill that ACA has filed?
The what?
The what? Here's a bill that's literally trying to get us paid for services that we're mandated to do, but won't be covered by Medicare.
Right.
And it's the second cycle now that they've filed this bill. Does your senator and representative know that this is important, that this is something that should be? Back in the day, there would be campaigns making sure that we all contacted our senators and representatives. Like you said, we'd be out there with signs protesting the State House or whatever. So the militant motivation is gone because, for the most part, a lot of chiropractors may be content at what they're receiving, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to continuously be aware of what is and is not happening to your profession. Are they cutting scope? Are they cutting practice procedures down? Are they paying you less this year than last year?
And the battle is different now. And I think the way legislatively the approach to these issues is different. Because you look at trade associations, right? I mean, when I've been around this profession and in it for
a long time,
a couple of decades, maybe, but I see the differences, and because we have members in states across the country, we can look at these differences and see that some state trade associations still have a fairly formidable grassroots effort and a lot of influence with legislative cycles. And then there's other states that just don't, that they've turned into CE companies more than trade associations in a sense.
And that's all that they have to offer is giving you your CEs, which, in the world of online classes today, that's not a good strategy.
No, I mean, we provide CE in all kinds of formats, and we can see that it has its ups and downs and challenges, but for a trade association, they've existed to help promote, defend, and make the professionals' lives and their practice better, right?
Supposed to serve and protect.
Well, but it's different than a regulatory body, right? Because regulatory bodies, you're a part of an executive branch, and your job is public protection first and foremost. That's it. If there's professional promotion, that is a byproduct. That is not the intent. Where trade associations' intent, in my opinion, would be for advancing and defending their professional license.
Absolutely. Here's a perfect example again. We talked about the ACA thing, but let me ask you this question to all those listening out there. How well do you know your neighbor?
Your chiropractic neighbor, you mean?
Your chiropractic neighbor. How many times have you gotten together and in a group of chiropractors and you all know each other? We've been to organizational meetings where all of a sudden it's a room full of chiropractors and you don't even know three others in the room.
Well,
and they might practice the next town over.
Gone are the days of introducing yourself to other chiropractors in the town you plan on practicing.
Oh my God.
And adjusting each other, right? And having that.
And
now,
having that, it's like, I know three.
Well, but also what's the reception like for the chiropractor already in town? Is this now competition I have to deal with and I'm not happy about it? Or back in the old days, there's plenty of room. Come on in.
Come on in. The more they know about chiropractic, the more we all have.
What technique do you offer? Like, hey, great, good to know. Oh, that's gone.
That kind of community mentality develops the strength to say, I'm tired of this. Let's do something about it and let's get together and try and make a difference. Let's make sure our scope is preserved, make sure that our representation to the insurance companies is on a parity with medicine. None of these things are happening because we've become a profession of individuals, and that doesn't work. That will never work. We have to be a profession, a group, show at least unity in decision-making and in purpose. Get 10 chiropractors in a room, you'll have 10 different versions of chiropractic, right?
Well, we beat that dead horse in one of our episodes.
Right.
So when we bring it back to politics in chiropractic, we've talked about board regulations and so most state board members that aren't public members are connected to the profession somehow. Either they're actually licensed in that particular field that they're regulating, or there's somehow, like on my board, we've got a board of health agent from a town. So they're not a massage therapist, but they have a capacity in which they're on the board. And then you've got a public member or more, or two. Your board, you're the public member on the board you serve. I'm not, but we've got 2 public member seats on our board. But when it comes to molding policy regulation, there's an opportunity there in the context of public protection to not just maintain scope, but expand scope. Because my opinion always is, if you can bring it in scope, that's best, because now you can regulate it and be the centurion for the public to make sure that it's done correctly and they're
instead
confident.
of fighting something internally with each other, just accept the fact that, well, it's not what I do.
Well,
so it's okay if you want to do it, but it's not what I do. So, and there's room for all of us to expand chiropractors in the public's mind and get them to understand who and what we are, as long as it's all chiropractic focused as the primary motivation, and that's me personally. But the whole idea is that since the beginning of time, we've never all done the same thing. It's always been differences between us. And that means that you may do certain things that I don't do. And because I don't do them doesn't mean that you shouldn't be allowed to do it. It just means I don't want to do it.
Well, that's like, if you think about it, if you don't have feedback from stakeholders and members of the public, you literally have 5 or 6 people who might make that decision to strike something from scope because they're not familiar with it, or they go, I would never do that in my office, so that's not chiropractic.
I don't care. I would never do it.
Right.
But
by doing that, the byproduct of removing it from scope is malpractice coverage is likely not there now, right? Now you're out there in the open as a chiropractor who now is doing something outside of scope.
Right.
Like,
they'll go to someone who does do it. And now they're not coming to you.
Right.
So chiropractic has to have the strength and the confidence and the maturity to recognize that chiropractic adjustment, first and foremost, primary everything. And then from there, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room to grow and be something. And you don't have to do and be everything to everybody.
But being engaged as a professional in your profession, in your state, so that do you know when your chiropractic board meets? When? Do you know what the agenda is? Have you ever, now most of them, if not all, are video remote. You can jump on and listen to them.
That's another question I was going to ask was have you ever even watched one of your board meetings?
Yeah.
Do you even understand, who's on your board? Oh my God, these are the people that are making decisions on your scope of practice. You should know them. And if things aren't going the way you want, you should be able to influence them in the right ways, but influence them to move your profession in your state the way you think is best, or at least have a voice. Most people would say, oh, I don't know who's on my board, and I don't know how to get on the board meeting if I wanted to. It's sad. We talk, ACA, you're not supporting the Medicare expansion bill by calling your representatives and senators, and you don't even know your state board exists. Oh my God. You have to start at least participating, even if it's a passive participation, where you're aware of what's going on. And if the need be, become proactive or active.
Well, in talking about in that space of not knowing, a lot of people, never mind the chiropractic professional, they don't know who their state senator and representative is, which is really frustrating because that's where you start. And there's a formula there, like every email or phone call equals so many thousand voters, like in there, that's how they formulate it. So yes, your one phone call, your one email does multiple. There's a multiplier there that you're not aware of.
Oh, I love it that we could get in a room of chiropractors and ask them how many of them love Medicare, and you won't get too many hands going up. Right? And they'll tell you all the things they hate about Medicare. And then I'll look at them and say, well, have you talked to your senator or representative? Well, no, why? because to change Medicare, it literally takes an act of Congress. It's all federal law that governs Medicare. So rather than complain about it, work toward changing it.
And that can and perhaps should include not only you yourself communicating with your state rep and your state senator, but encouraging your chiropractic colleague to do the same so that you can multiply that multiplier that happens on the other end.
But that requires you knowing who your chiropractic colleague is.
Well, there is Google, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose. Get together, even if it's just for a lunch. You don't even have to talk chiropractic or politics if you don't want to, but get to know your professionals that are in your area or even outside your area, in your state, outside your state. Again, the concept of knowing each other has value and strength just in and of itself.
It does. And there's a level, I think there's a level of frustration that I have, and I'm sure others might share. Those that either aren't active are frustrated because they think the system can never have any influence, or you are trying, but you're in a bit of a silo because you don't know your colleagues, or you're not engaged with your trade association, or your trade association is falling short. Whatever it may be, it doesn't mean to give up or just resign yourself that this is the way it is.
And don't prejudge it. You won't know until you get involved, until you become informed, till you act as a group instead of an individual. Because as an individual, there's a lot of less opportunity to make a direct difference. But as an individual, you have an opportunity to become a stronger group. So you take a bunch of individuals and you put them together, and now you have a bunch of voices. Now you have a bunch of people talking to their legislators and senators, state and federal. You have to become involved. And that's what politics is. It's really just looking at something that you want to change and get involved in a way to try and make that change. It's that simple. That's politics. And if you love chiropractic exactly the way it is, if you love your reimbursement rates, if you love the way Medicare treats you, if you love exactly the way chiropractic is, then you go, okay, great, I don't want any changes. I don't think there are too many people out there that love everything about the way chiropractic is politically right now. Or
politics in general, but you have to find commonalities, right? So even if you have to hold your nose and reach across, quote unquote, the aisle to the side that you don't lean to politically. But as a chiropractor, that is your politics, in my opinion. As a professional, that is your politics. Whatever is going to help promote, defend, and your ability to make progress is your political campaign.
Absolutely. And to all the younger practitioners, you have to appreciate the fact that you are where you are, even as a professional today, because people fought for everything that we have. Nothing was handed to us.
Can we talk about this for a second? All right. Because now you're sounding like that experienced chiropractor.
Well, I am.
But I'll say this. I don't disagree with what you just said. However, there is this challenge with the younger generation to appreciate the inroads that older generations have made because of the relevancy factor of today, right? Mm-hmm. How is that relevant to today? I'm going to tell this story in a very generic way. So years and years ago, I was at this trade association conference or whatever, and this seasoned chiropractor came up to me. He was more seasoned than you, Mark, believe it or not. And he was describing to me how the Medicare local coverage determination policy was crafted. We're talking about like in the early 80s. And he's telling me this story, which went on and on and on. And he said that the young kids need to know about this. And we passed the bottle around as we were creating the list of diagnosis codes. And I just went to him and I said, why? Why does someone need to know that? Like, because that's not how it happens today.
Right.
Right? So my pushback isn't that inroads weren't made, but they're made very differently today, I think. There's a lot of different avenues.
Well, my message really is that appreciate the fact that everything you have today came from somebody fighting for it. which means that everything you want from this day forward has to come from you fighting for it. It's not going to just fall in your lap. So, yeah, it'd be nice to maybe take an old guy out to lunch kind of thing, but I'm not even saying that. You don't even have to acknowledge it as the fact that somebody did something in your state for whatever reason. I'm saying recognize that nothing that you have today just happened. It happened because they got involved, they participated as a group, they fought for it, they had vision, they had direction, and that's all we're saying. Do it with your people. Start from today. Never mind the past. Start from today and say, where do we want chiropractic to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And get together with like-minded people enough and come up with common goals and just make it happen.
And I think when you connect with people with the same goal, but different understanding and knowledge, you can create a depth of awareness because your congressman, your senator or woman doesn't know what you know.
Right.
They may not even know, they may have never been to a chiropractor. They don't know what you guys do. Or maybe they think all you do is rack somebody's neck and
couldn't even spell it if you asked them to.
Right.
Right.
So coming up with this depth of knowledge and your passion, I think, is going to make a big difference.
I do. So what's our parting thought here in a sense?
All right. So I'm not going to say I endorse this quote, but I have a quote from Mark Twain that I just had to I had to say it. So Mark Twain said, "Suppose you were an idiot, and suppose you were a member of Congress, but I repeat myself."
Oh,
it was too good not to say.
Too good not to say. Yes. So get involved, get active, become aware, make a difference.
Doesn't matter where you lean. It matters where you go.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
Dr. Mark Davini. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.